Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about ordering decimals. This is 3.3 and we're going to start off by our objective. The objective for the day is, before we jump into that, let's talk about what we've learned before. Before, you compared and ordered whole numbers. Now you'll compare and order decimals. So our main difference today is we're going to be comparing decimals instead of whole numbers. Now, in order for us to help us out, let's do our definition of a number line. This is our vocabulary for the day. So a number line, a line whose points are associated with numbers. You can use a number line to compare and order numbers. The numbers on a number line increase from left to right. And thus we see, here's a little example of a number line, and we're going to show that today on some of the questions. Also, let's talk about key concept for today's lesson. So, in order for us to compare decimals, the very first thing we want to do is write the decimals in a column, lining the decimal points. Remember, column is up and down, rows are right to left. Now, second thing, if necessary, write the zeros to the right of the decimals so that all decimals have the same number of decimal places. That's kind of key, and we'll show an example just in a second. And third, compare place values from left to right. And the main reason why we're comparing place values from left to right is the numbers get larger as we go to the left, just like we have our decimal place, then the ones, tens, hundreds. So as we're going to the left of the decimal, we're getting larger and larger. Now, let's move on to our example. So here's our first example. Let's say we have 7.2 compared to 7.1. Now, in order for us to solve this, it might be obvious that we know that 7.2 is the answer, but in order for us to solve it and to prove it, we're going to write 7.1 right underneath it. Now when we do that, then I can compare that we have two 7s that are the same in the same place value, the 1s, but then we notice that 2 is bigger than 1, and so when we see that, we can say that 7.2 is greater than 7.1. Let's do another example. 7.2 and 7.20. Well, very first thing we're going to do is we're going to line them up. So we have 7.2 lined up with 7.20. Now let's go to step number 2. Remember, we need to add zeros so that they have the same number of place values. So if we add a 0 there, we notice that these numbers are the same. They're the same. They have 7, they have 2, and they have 0. So they're the same. So these two are equal. So that's just a quick overview of how we're going to compare decimals. Now let's move on to the assignment. Today we're going to be on page 132. This is lesson 3.3. The very first one, it says copy and complete the statement using the number line. And so we have 7.41 is blank to 7.55, and we're comparing these. So if we found 7.41, which is this point right up here on our number line, and we're comparing it with 7.55, which one's bigger? Well, obviously 7.55 is larger, and so we see that on the number line. Now let's show by comparing them in, but before we do that, let's just kind of put some zeros on here, because 7.2 is the same thing as 7.20, and 7.3 is the same thing as 7.30. That'll really help us out. So we saw that 7.55 is greater. Let's prove it now. Well, we write 7.55. Now let's compare. We have the 7s are the same. Then we go to the 4 and the 5. Well, 5 is bigger than 4, so 7.55 must be bigger. Number 2, we have 7.33 is blank to 7.24. Well, let's find 7.33, which is right here. And is that further up the number line? Yes, it is. So 7.33 is bigger than 7.24, but let's go ahead and prove it by using the line-up method. So line them up, and we notice that 7.7, well, we have 7s that are the same. The decimals line up, but 2 is smaller than 3, so 7.33 is larger. Now, we're going to be talking about finding a number between 7.33 and 7.41. Well, let's look right here. We have 7.33 and 7.41. We can choose any of these numbers between those two dots. And so let's go ahead and choose some number. I'm going to choose 7.34. And that is between it. Now, an easy way, whenever we have two decimal places, easiest thing is to think of money. So I have $7.33 and $7.41. I need a number between that, which is a number between 741 and 733, 734. Number 3, 741 is between 733, so we start at 733. We see 741's right here, and then we have to have another number. We can choose any of these numbers. I went ahead and chose 7.42. Now let's move on to the next part of the assignment. Very first thing we're going to talk about, once again, it's page 132. The assignment is 1 to 26, 53 to 60. And we're going to kind of jump around a little bit today. To start off, let's look at number 5. So number 5 is right here. It says 7 centimeters compared to 7.2 centimeters. So once again, what we're going to do is, this is how I'd like to see your work. Number 5. We have 7. Now don't worry about the centimeters because we know that we're dealing with that measurement, but we're not going to worry about that today. And 7.2. Now what I like to do is I like to compare the smaller number of numbers with the larger. So I'm going to line this up, and since 7 doesn't have a decimal, we're going to add that decimal and a 0. Then we're going to go ahead and compare. Well, we have 7 and 7 in the first. The decimals line up. Well, 2 is bigger than 0, so we know that 7.2 is bigger than 7.0. Number 6. We have 12.0 compared to 12. Now once again I'm going to choose the 12 to move because it has the least amount of digits. So I have 12. Well, rule number 2 said add zeros to make them have the same amount. Well, these are exactly the same. They're 1's the same, 2's the same, and 0's the same, so these two are equal. So we see that. That's how you do problems 5 through 19 on the assignment. Now let's jump down to ordering decimals from least to greatest. Now, key word right here is least to greatest. So we want the smallest amount to the largest. Let's think about money. So I have $5.34, $5.12, $5.43. Well, that's pretty easy if we think about money. 5.12, comma 5.34, comma 5.43. Really, really simple. Now, that's pretty straightforward. If we were confused on how to do that, we could line them up. But if you think of money, it makes it a lot simpler. So that's how you do 20 through 26. Now the last part of the assignment is just review. So it's on this page. We're doing rounding. Remember, you look behind the red digit to tell whether it rounds up or down. Remember, 5 or greater, the number is going to round up, and 4 or less, the number is going to round down. 56 through 58 is order of operations. Remember PEMDAS, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication and division from left to right, and add, subtract from left to right. And 59 and 60 are pretty straightforward. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.